When the Xbox 360 launched in November 2025, it wasn't just the start of a new console generation. It was a seismic shift in how we played, connected and experienced video games. High definition visuals, online multiplayer baked into the system, achievements, downloadable content. It was the beginning of a modern gaming era as we know it today. And at the heart of that launch was a lineup of launch titles that tried to show us what the future could look like. But here's the thing, launch titles are a strange group of games. They're built under pressure, often rushed to meet tight deadlines, and they're tasked with selling a vision sometimes before the hardware is even settled. Some are tech demos dressed up as games, others bold experiments, and a few, well, they become legends. This series is my deep dive into every single Xbox 360 launch title. Retail releases, not arcade downloads. I'm talking about those full spectrum blockbuster games like Call of Duty 2 and Quake 4, to the weird and wonderful like AMP 3 and Kameo. We'll look at how they played then, how they hold up now, and what they meant for the console, the industry, and the players who picked them up, playing with that white controller for the first time. Each review will run for about 5 minutes, enough for us to dig into the gameplay, visuals, legacy, and the quirks without overstaying their welcome. I've also pulled up some Metacritic scores for context, and I'll wrap things up with a quick look on how each game holds up in 2025. Some titles have aged like a fine wine. Others, well, let's just say they're probably left better on the memory card. This isn't just nostalgia, it's analysis. Whether you were there on day one or discovering these games for the first time, I want to give you the full picture. What worked, what didn't, and why these titles mattered. Because the Xbox 360 didn't just launch a console, it launched an era. So, grab your Mountain Dew, blow the dust off that dish tray, and let's rewind to 2005.
Hello, and my name is Kim. I'm here to start you on a journey into the future of entertainment. It's a future where I am always at the center of a world of experiences that include my games and my friends. It's a future where my games are always personalized to match my desires. A future where those games connect me to the people and experiences I care about most. That future starts right here, right now. This is my Xbox 360. It's here and it's on.
AMP 3 wasn't just a snowboarding game. It was a full-blown personality explosion. Developed by IndieBuilt and published by 2K Sports, this 360 launch title took the serious tone of its predecessors, flipped it upside down, and traded realism for ridiculousness, and carved out a cult following in the process. Visually, AMP 3 made the most of the 360's early high-definition capabilities. Snow textures shimmered, lighting effects popped, and the environments, ranging from alpine resorts to urban snowparks, felt expansive and alive. But what really set it apart was its style. The menus, cutscenes, and story segments were stitched together with a mix of live-action puppetry, crude animation, comic book panels, and absurd voiceovers. It was like Adult Swim meets SSX in a fever dream, and it worked. The core gameplay was tight and responsive. You could carve down the slopes, launch off jumps, and string together tricks with a combo system that rewarded creativity and risk. AM3 introduced a new respect system, earning points not just for tricks, but for style, flair, and completing challenges. Missions range from traditional score targets to bizarre objectives like launching fireworks or herding penguins. Yes, penguins. Controls were intuitive for veterans and accessible for newcomers. Spins, flips, grabs, tweaks were mapped cleanly, and the physics struck a balance between arcade fun and believable motion. With the story, AM3 went completely off-piste. The story followed a crew of snowboarders trying to rescue their kidnapped friend and save their mountain from corporate takeover. But the plot really is just a vehicle for chaos. Cutscenes are packed with absurd jokes, surreal characters, fourth wall breaking moments, and a mission where you get to dress as a giant hot dog. AM3 received solid reviews, praise for its gameplay, humour, and visual flair. It scored around about 72 across Metacritic's major outlets, and while it didn't spawn a sequel, it did become a cult classic, especially where you saw that it was there in a sea of serious sports sims during launch, and it was the punk rock snowboarder doing backflips off a roof. Wildly creative and hilarious, the open world snowboarding and absurd story has made it a bit of a cult classic. However, the physics are dated today, and some of the jokes do miss the mark. AM3 was a bold, bizarre, and brilliant launch title, and it showed the Xbox 360 wasn't just about realism, it was about fun. It had tight mechanics, wild storytelling, a rebellious spirit, and it carved its own path down the mountain, leaving a trail of chaos behind. If you missed it at the time, it is worth stepping in and taking a ride. When FIFA 06 Road to the World Cup launched alongside the 360, it wasn't just another entry in EA's long-running football franchise. It was a visual statement. Built exclusively for the new console, this version wasn't about club football or career modes. It was laser-focused on one thing: qualifying for the 2006 World Cup in Germany. Let's start with the graphics, because that's where this game truly flexed compared to other launch titles. It was EA's first foray into the HD world of football, and it showed. Player models were more lifelike, stadiums had depth and atmosphere, and the lighting effects gave matches a broadcast quality. You could see individual blades of grass, sweat glistening on foreheads, and crowd animations that felt alive. It was a massive leap from the PS2 era. The menus were sleek and modern, with a clean interface that matched the 360's futuristic vibe, and commentary from Clive Tildesley and Andy Gray added authenticity, though it could get quite repetitive over time. The gameplay, however, was a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, it introduced smoother animations and improved ball physics and more responsive controls. Passing felt crisp, shooting had weight, and player movement was more fluid than ever. On the other hand, it lacked depth. No club teams, no career mode, limited tactical options. It was stripped down compared to FIFA 06 on other platforms. The AI was okay, opponents pressed intelligently, they adapted to play, but defensive mechanics were stiff and goalkeepers had the tendency to perform either miracles or completely miss the ball. EA had prioritised visuals over gameplay complexity in this particular version. Multiplayer was solid, you could play locally or online, and matches ran fairly smoothly thanks to Xbox Live's infrastructure. But again, that lack of variety hurt replayability, no pro clubs, no ultimate team at this time, no deep customization. It was just a showcase title, not a full-featured sim. Training mode was included, letting you practice set pieces and refine your skills, but there was no robust progression system, and it was a tech demo rather than a long-term investment. It received mixed reviews on launch. Critics praised its visuals and presentation, but criticised the lack of content. It scored around 62 on Metacritic across major outlets. Hardcore FIFA fans said it was a bit of a curiosity. It was an early glimpse of what next-gen football would look like. For casual players, it was fun, but a fleeting experience. It's worth noting that this did lay the groundwork for future FIFA titles on 360, and they used it to test new animation systems and crowd dynamics and lighting engines that did evolve into FIFA 07 and into the releases beyond that. FIFA Road to the World Cup 06 was at the time a visual marvel and a technical milestone, but it was not the full package. And it gave people a taste of what next-gen football might look like, but it did leave us hungry for more. As a launch title, it did its job. It showed what the Xbox 360 was capable of, and it got fans excited for the future of the beautiful game.
Into the lead are England.
Well, can you believe it was way back against Argentina and he scored that magnificent goal, and since then Michael Owen has just grown and grown and grown.
It's back to him and he can cross it now.
When NBA Live 06 hit the 360 at launch, it promised a courtside seat to the future of basketball gaming. EA Sports aimed to deliver a slick, high-definition experience that captured the high speed and style swagger of the NBA. While the visuals dazzled, the gameplay left fans divided. Let's start with the good news. NBA Live 06 looked phenomenal for its time. Player models were sharper, animations smoother, arenas more detailed than ever before. You could see sweat glistening under the arena lights, jerseys rippled during fast breaks, and crowds reacted with real-time intensity. EA's new lighting engine gave the game a broadcast-style polish that felt truly next-gen. Signature moves were highlights. Superstars like Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade and LeBron James all had unique animations for the game that mirrored their real-life playstyles. And the presentation was slick, with an ESPN-style overlay and dynamic camera angles that made every dunk feel like a highlight reel. One of the biggest criticisms was the lack of modes in NBA Live 06. It didn't include a Dynasty mode, All-Star Weekends, basic player editing. It was bare bones compared to its PS2 counterpart. No franchise building, no slam dunk contests, no three-point shootouts, just exhibition games, season mode, and some online play. The stripped-down approach made it feel more like a tech demo than a full release, again similarities to FIFA, and EA had clearly prioritised the visuals over the content. NBA Live 06 received mixed reviews at launch. Critics praised the visuals and presentation, but they slammed the lack of gameplay and features. It averaged around about 6.5 out of 10 across major outlets, and for long-time fans of the series, it felt like a step backwards. For newcomers, it was flashy, but a shallow experience. Still, it did lay the groundwork for future NBA Live titles, and EA did use it to test out some of those new animations and crowd dynamics. NBA Live 06 was a visual slam dunk, but gameplay was an absolute airball. It showed off what the 360 could do graphically, but it did forget to bring a full playbook. If you're looking for quick thrills and highlight dunks, then it was great. But if you wanted some depth and strategy and a long-term game, you were better off sticking with the previous generation.
Carter giving no room. Rose again, and Jalen Rose.
Now, when NBA 2K6 was available at launch, this was not just another basketball game. This was a declaration. Developed by Visual Concepts and published by 2K Sports, this title brought more simulation-level realism, a deep control set, and a slick presentation that made it very clear that NBA Live 06 had some serious competition. NBA 2K6 was a visual leap. Player models were detailed and expressive, realistic skin textures, accurate tattoos, fluid animations. The arenas were alive, crowds reacted dynamically, lighting changed based on the time of the day, and those ESPN-style overlays gave it a broadcast feel. There were signature styles for the players with standout power dunks from Shaq and fadeaways from Kobe. Even the little things impressed. Jerseys moved naturally, sweat built up over time, and players showed emotion after big plays. It was immersive, cinematic, and polished. Where NBA 2K6 really shined was control. The game introduced the shot stick. The right analog control system let you aim shots, control layups, and finesse dunks with precision. It was revolutionary. No more button mashing. Now you had to master timing, direction, and player tendencies. Dribbling felt tight, passing was more responsive, and defence required positioning and anticipation. The physics engine gave weight to collisions, and rebounding was a battle on the paint. It wasn't arcade style, it was basketball as it played. Free throws used a unique mechanic where you had to align two moving bars with the triggers. It was tricky at first, but it added tension at clutch moments. And the learning curve was steep but rewarding. Unlike its rival NBA Live 06, NBA 2K6 came packed with modes. The association mode let you manage a team across seasons, handling trades, scouting, player development. You could adjust rotations, track player morale, even negotiate contracts. It was deep, strategic, and addictive. 24/7 mode returned, offering a single-player journey where you created a baller, climbed through the ranks, through street courts and challenges. It was stylized, quirky, and gave the game personality beyond the NBA hardwood. It had online multiplayer. It was solid. Xbox Live integration allowed for ranked matches, leaderboards, stat tracking. Lag was minimal. Matchmaking was smooth. You challenged friends, climbed the ladder against strangers, and the competitive scene was already forming. NBA 2K6 received strong reviews. It averaged about 8 out of 10. Critics praised its realism, depth, and innovation, especially the shot stick and franchise modes. It didn't reinvent the genre, but it refined it, and for many fans it marked the beginning of 2K's dominance in basketball sims. It laid the foundation for future 2K titles, the control schemes, the presentation style, and the gameplay philosophy, introduced here, evolved into the juggernaut that 2K became in later years. The game also holds up pretty well today. I've spent quite a bit of time playing this. I'm not a basketball fan, but I found it to be really easy to pick up and play, and the presentation still stands up and looks great today. NBA 2K6 was the thinking man's basketball game. It didn't rely on flash, it delivered in substance. It had deep mechanics, immersive presentation, and commitment to realism. It proved that sports could be more than just button mashing. If NBA Live 06 was a dunk contest, NBA 2K6 was a full season, and it played every game like it mattered.
Brings it up the court. He's 2 for 4 for the quarter. James crosses it over. The pass to Bosch. Behind the arc. Bounces off the left rim and out. The Eastern All-Stars with the ball. They lead by 1. The quick shot was hit by him.
When NHL 2K6 skated onto the 360 at launch, it brought with it a legacy of simulation-style hockey with a reputation for depth. Developed by Visual Concepts and published by 2K Sports, this title didn't just aim to look better, it aimed to play smarter. And while it wasn't a complete overhaul from the previous gen, it delivered a solid strategic experience for fans of the sport. 2K6 took advantage of the 360's horsepower to develop crisp visuals and smoother animations. Player models were more detailed, with realistic facial features, accurate gear, and a fluid skating mechanic. The arenas were lively, crowds reacted to big hits, goals, and fights with dynamic energy. Lighting effects gave the ice a glossy sheen, and reflections added depth to the rink. The presentation was clean and professional, the overlays mimicked a real-life broadcast, and commentary from Bob Cole and Harry Neal added authenticity, even if it occasionally lagged behind the action. The gameplay leaned heavily into realism. 2K6 wasn't about arcade-style speed, it was about positioning, timing, strategy. The puck physics was solid, the AI played smart. Defenders cut off passing lanes, goalies adjusted to angles, and offensive players looked for open ice. One of the standout features was the enforcer system. Big hitters could intimidate opponents, change momentum, draw penalties. It added a psychological layer to the game. Do you go for the hit, or do you play it safe? 2K6 came packed with modes. Franchise mode let you manage a team across multiple seasons, handling trades, scouting finances, and player development. You could adjust ticket prices, negotiate contracts, and build a dynasty. It was deep, rewarding, and it gave you full control. It had online multiplayer, Xbox Live integration allowed for ranked matches, stat tracking, and leaderboards, and the lag was minimal, and matchmaking was smooth. You could challenge friends or climb the ladder against complete strangers, and the competitive scene was already forming. Voice chat added a social layer, and custom rosters meant you could tweak lineups before face-off. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step up from the previous generation. 2K6 received strong reviews, averaging 8. Critics praised its realism, depth, and feature set. It didn't reinvent the genre, but it refined it. For many fans, it was a go-to hockey sim, especially compared to NHL 06, which leaned towards more of the arcade and wasn't developed for the next generation. It laid the foundation for future 2K hockey titles. The control schemes, the presentation style, the gameplay, the philosophy, all introduced here, they would evolve into later entries, and even as the series eventually faded from the spotlight, this remained a standout. NHL 2K6 was smart, strategic, and satisfying. It didn't rely on flash, it delivered substance. With deep mechanics, an immersive presentation, and a commitment to the realism, it proved that the sports games could be more than just button mashers. If you wanted to feel the grind of a full season, the tension of a playoff run, and the thrill of that last second goal, 2K6 was your ticket to the ice. 2K really demonstrated with their games of the launch lineup that EA had really under-delivered on some of their sports titles, whereas these were packed out with career modes. Those were more of a tech demo from EA than a full established game like the 2K offerings.
And now touching up for the face-off will be at the left of the net as the players get ready. The Eastern All-Stars get the face-off up by 2 in their home. And here's a big chance. Number 31 able to grab it with the glove. Puck over to the right wing. Fired. Number 21 misses that shot on goal. Primo takes it up through the zone. Yager able to send the puck out. The D needs to get back. Here they come. Over to the point. And it's deflected off the right pad. Rafalski, center ice. 2-on-2. And it's saved by number 31. The puck is hit up the right side. And he's got it through the zone. Brodeur stops that shot, heading for the low right side. Primo out in the middle. They've got a 3-on-2 chance here.
This is a stick save, and a pretty good one off that wrist shot, Bob. We know it's tough to pick it up when it comes off the stick. You don't telegraph it at all on most wrist shots. You have to love the guys that are willing to do anything to keep a lead. They're up by 2, and because of this...
When Tiger Woods PGA Tour 06 launched with the 360, it was EA Sports' first tee shot into the high-definition era of golf. Known for blending simulation with accessibility, the Tiger Woods series had already built a strong following, but this version was a visual showcase, not a fully featured overhaul. It looked sharp, it played smooth, and it gave players a taste of what next-generation golf could be like, even if it didn't bring the full bag of clubs. Visually, 06 was a step up. The 360's extra power allowed for some lush course environments, detailed golf models, and dynamic lighting that gave each round a broadcast quality feel. Fairways shimmered, bunkers looked textured, and water hazards reflected the sky with impressive realism. Tiger himself was rendered with care, his swing, stance, and expressions captured with motion capture presentation. Courses like Pebble Beach, St Andrews, and TPC Sawgrass felt alive. The trees moved, the crowds reacted, and ambient sounds, birds, wind, distant applause, all added real immersion. But it wasn't flawless. However, it was a clear leap up from the PS2 era. The gameplay remained familiar but refined. The analog swim system returned, letting players control power, accuracy, and the thumbstick. It was intuitive but punishing. Mistimed swings could send your ball slicing into the trees or skimming a bunker. Putting was more nuanced, with green reads requiring careful attention to slope and speed. However, many of the features were missing. The game face customization tool was gone, and the Tiger Challenge mode, where you faced off against legends and rivals, was absent. These omissions made the experience feel lighter than its PS2 counterpart. The career mode was present, but it was simplified. You created a golfer, entered some tournaments, and earned cash to upgrade gear and stats. Without the full target challenge or a robust skill progression, it felt more like a series of exhibition rounds than a true journey to greatness. 06 received mixed to positive reviews. Critics said that its visuals were great and the swing mechanics and the course design were good, but it lacked any real features compared to the PS2 version. It averaged around 7.5 across review outlets. For fans of the series, it was a promising start to next-gen golf, but for newcomers, a slightly shallow introduction.
Get lucky.
Wood seems to be up to the challenge of making birdie here, Gary.
Yes!
Madden had absolutely dominated football gaming for years, and this version was meant to be a showcase of what next gen could look like. But while the visuals for 06 were impressive, the gameplay and the features didn't quite match the hype. There's a theme emerging here for EA Sports games that launch on the Xbox 360. Great visuals, lacked any depth. 06 was a graphical leap. Player models were lifelike, stadiums were richly detailed, and lighting effects gave a game broadcast style polish. You could see the jersey textures, the helmet reflections, breath in cold weather games. Animations were smoother, tackles looked more impactful, and the overall presentation felt cinematic. There were ESPN style overlays and commentary from Al Michaels and John Madden added authenticity, though the commentary itself hadn't really evolved much from those PS2 era games, and it was prone to a lot of repetition and some very awkward timing. On the field, Madden 06 introduced the quarterback vision cone, a controversial mechanic that simulated a quarterback's field of view. You had to manually aim the cone to the target receivers, adding realism but also complexity. For elite QBs like Peyton Manning, the cone was wide and forgiving. For rookies or backups, it was narrow, punishing. Some players loved the added challenge, others found it clunky and unfair. The running game felt quite solid. Jukes, spins and stiff arms were responsive, and the physics engine gave weight to collisions. Passing was more precise, but also more difficult due to the vision cone. Defensive plays were decent, zone coverage worked well, blitzes could disrupt timing, but AI occasionally broke down, especially in late game situations. Madden 06 stumbled when it came to features. Unlike its PS2 counterpart, this version lacked key modes. No franchise mode, no superstar mode, no owner mode. You couldn't manage rosters, draft players, build a dynasty. It was basically stripped down to exhibition, season, and online play. Madden 06 received very mixed reviews. Critics again praised the visuals and core gameplay, but slammed the lack of features. It averaged around 7 out of 10 across review outlets, and for long-time fans it was an absolute disappointment. For newcomers, it was flashy, but albeit very shallow. It did, however, set everything up for EA to build when it came to 07. It used this version to test out new animations, new lighting, and new gameplay mechanics, and it would evolve into Madden 07 and beyond. Madden 06 was a visual touchdown compared to the previous generations, but unfortunately the lack of features yet again meant that it brought around quite a bit of a demo feel to it rather than a full release. It gave fans a glimpse into the future, but for some, during launch, it was a bit of a letdown.
Okay, you should be able to run the ball and get the yards you need here.
When Project Gotham Racing 3 was launched on the 360, this was not just a normal racing game. It was a flex. Developed by Bizarre Creations, published by Microsoft Game Studios, Project Gotham Racing 3 was designed to show off the console's graphical muscle, its online capabilities, and its refined driving mechanics, and it delivered on all fronts. The visuals were an absolute powerhouse. Car models were stunning, each one meticulously created with photorealistic detail, down to the stitching on the seats and the reflections in the paint. You could drive Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens, and more, all rendered in glorious high definition. Interiors were fully modelled, a first for the series, allowing for immersive cockpit views that felt like you were really behind the wheel. The environments were equally impressive. Tracks spanned iconic cities like New York, Tokyo, London, Las Vegas, each brought to life with dynamic lighting, crowds, and weather effects. Racing through Times Square at night with the neon lights bouncing off your windshield was pure eye candy. And the game's menus and the UI were slick, modern, with a minimalist effect that matched the high-end vibe of the cars. It felt premium from start to finish. Project Gotham Racing 3 struck a balance between arcade fun and simulation precision. It wasn't as punishing as Forza, but wasn't as free for all either. The handling was tight, responsive, and varied depending on the car. A Ferrari F430 felt nimble and aggressive, while a Ford GT had weight and muscle. You had to learn each car's quirks to master them. The kudos system returned, rewarding stylish driving, drifts, clean overtakes, and cornering finesse. It encouraged players to race with flair, not just speed. Earning kudos unlocked new cars and challenges, adding a layer of progression that kept you coming back for more. AI opponents were competitive but fair. They'd block, they'd draft, they would make mistakes, creating a dynamic racing that felt organic. Difficulty settings allowed for casual play or hardcore challenge depending on your mood. Project Gotham Racing 3 featured a robust single-player career mode where you climbed the ranks through various different race types, street races, time trials, cone challenges, and elimination events. Each felt distinct, and the variety kept things fresh. The garage was packed with 80 licensed cars, from supercars to concept vehicles, and you could view them all in a virtual showroom where you could walk around them, even sit inside. Multiplayer was a highlight. Xbox Live integration allowed for online races, leaderboards, and ghost challenges. You could race against your friends or strangers, compare lap times, climb the global ranks. The community was active, the competition was fierce. PGR 3 received critical acclaim, averaging 8.5 to 9 out of 10. Reviewers praised the visuals, the driving mechanics, and its online features. It was seen as the definitive launch title, one that justified the jump to next gen and set a pretty high bar for racing games afterwards to follow. It cemented Bizarre Creations' reputation as a master of stylish racing. The series would eventually fade after Project Gotham Racing 4. Its influence can still be felt though in modern racers, that blend of realism with flair. Project Gotham Racing 3 was a masterclass of a launch title. It looked incredible, played beautifully, and offered enough depth to keep players hooked for months. Whether you were chasing the kudos, collecting the dream cars, battling rivals online, Project Gotham Racing 3 made sure every race felt like an event. It wasn't just about crossing the line, it was about doing it with style. I've reviewed this game quite recently and found myself that through all these Xbox 360 games from launch, that this is the one that I've come back to time and time again. It's not perfect, but it is a really, really, really good launch title. And it does make you think about some of the games that come out today that launch with modern consoles, and they lack this step of next generation feel. Even today, the graphics in this game hold up reasonably well, and it certainly doesn't look out of place in anyone's collection. What an absolute fantastic title to launch a new console with, and it's a real shame that Microsoft can't revisit this in their modern collection to bring Project Gotham Racing back, even in the form that it was in when we first saw it all those years ago. When Need for Speed Most Wanted launched in late 2005, it wasn't just another entry in EA's long-running racing series. It was a reinvention, combining the underground street culture of Need for Speed Underground with an open-world exploration and police pursuits chaos of Hot Pursuit. Most Wanted delivered a cinematic, adrenaline-fueled experience that helped define the Xbox 360's early days. On 360, Most Wanted looked sharper than ever. The cars gleamed with high-resolution textures, reflections danced across the bodywork, and the lighting engine gave Rockport a moody, atmospheric vibe. Rain-slicked roads, sun-drenched highways, and a gritty industrial zones all popped in high definition. The motion blur and particle effects during the high-speed chases added some intensity, and the damage modelling, while limited, gave collisions a satisfying crunch. Cutscenes used a live-action actors composited with stylized filtered. This gave the story a gritty comic book feel. Razor Callahan and his crew were cheesy but somewhat memorable, and the FMV sequences added some personality to the single-player campaign. Most Wanted's driving leaned towards the arcade style, and there was enough weight and nuance to reward skill. Cars felt distinct. Muscle cars had raw power and poor cornering, while tuners offered agility and control. The physics weren't realistic, but they were fun, and drifting around corners and dodging traffic and threading through alleyways always felt exhilarated. The police chases were the game's crown jewel. Pursuits escalated in intensity, starting with basic cruisers, ramping up to SUVs, spike traps, helicopter surveillance. The heat level system added tension. Higher meant tougher cops and more aggressive tactics. You could evade by hiding in safe zones or triggering environmental traps like collapsing water towers or exploding gas stations. Races included circuit, sprint and drag and toll booth challenges, each with unique pacing and strategy. The rubber banding AI could be really frustrating at times, but the thrill of the chase kept things engaging. The single-player campaign revolved around climbing the Blacklist, a roster of 15 rival racers that you had to defeat to reclaim your stolen BMW M3 GTR. Each rival had personality and a signature car and a set of challenges to complete before facing them. Winning unlocked a new vehicle, upgrades, and a different territory. Progressing was satisfying. You earned bounty by outrunning cops, completed milestones, and tuned your ride with performance parts. The garage system allowed you to manage multiple cars, customize visuals, and tweak setups for different types of races. The customization wasn't as deep as Underground 2. Visual mods were limited, but performance tuning was robust, and you could upgrade engine, suspension, nitrous, and tyres, giving each car a distinct feel. Need for Speed Most Wanted is a critical and commercial success. It averaged about 8.5 out of 10 across all major review outlets and sold millions of copies worldwide. Fans praised its blend of open-world exploration, intense police chases and cinematic flair, and it became a benchmark for the series and it remains one of the most beloved Need for Speed titles to date. It also helped define the 360's launch window. It showed that racing games could be more than just time trials and lap counts. They could tell stories, they could build tension, and deliver some blockbuster thrills. Need for Speed Most Wanted is fast, furious, and unforgettable. With its stylized presentation, addictive chase mechanics, and satisfying progression, it captured the spirit of street racing and wrapped it in a next-gen package. Whether you were dodging those spike traps or gunning for a Blacklist number 1, every moment felt like a scene from an action movie, and that's what made it special. Again, I played this quite recently, and I was quite hooked by it, actually. I ended up playing it for about an hour, and I did want to go back and play it a little bit more. The graphics, I can imagine, were quite a step up from what it looked like on the PS2 or the original Xbox, and the high-definition graphical fidelity of this particular version of the game made those cutscenes stand out a lot more better than they would have done, I think, on the legacy consoles. I think this game is perfectly playable today, although some of the acting is a little bit corny. Continuing with the racing games, Ridge Racer 6 launched on the Xbox 360, and it brought a blast of pure arcade adrenaline to a lineup dominated by sports games. Developed by Namco, this entry leaned hard into the franchise's legacy. Drift-heavy gameplay, pulse-pounding music, and a sense of speed that bordered on the surreal. It wasn't trying to be Forza or Project Gotham Racing, it was being Ridge Racer, and it made no apologies. Ridge Racer 6 was an absolute visual rush. While not the most technically advanced title in the launch lineup, it delivered a clean, vibrant aesthetic that felt true to the series. Tracks were drenched in colour, sunset highways, neon cityscapes, and futuristic tunnels all popped in high definition. The sense of speed was intense, with motion blur and camera shake amplifying every drift and boost. The car models were sleek and stylised. They weren't licensed, but they were designed to look fast and aggressive. And the UI was sharp, and the menus were responsive, and the game ran at a smooth 60 frames per second, a key selling point for fans of fluid racing. Gameplay was classic Ridge Racer, fast, forgiving, and all about the drift. Cornering wasn't about braking, it was about timing your slide, feathering the throttle, and chaining the drifts to build boost. The more stylish your driving, the more nitrous you earned, and the more you could rocket past the opponents. The drift system was exaggerated but consistent. Once mastered, it felt like a ballet at 200 miles an hour. You could enter a corner sideways, hold the slide through impossible curves, and exit with a burst of speed. It wasn't realistic, but it was exhilarating. The boost management system added strategy. You had 3 tanks of nitrous, and knowing when to burn them during straights and after a drift, or to escape a pack, was key to winning. The AI was aggressive but fair, and there was some rubber banding present, but nothing overwhelming. Ridge Racer 6 featured over 30 tracks, many of them variants of core layouts. While some reused assets, the design was tight. Each course offered a mix of technical turns, long straights, and scenic backdrops. The track variety kept races fresh, and mastering each layout was part of the fun. The car roster included dozens of fictional vehicles, each with different handling and profiles, and a boost capabilities. You unlocked cars by progressing through the game's World Explorer mode, a branching grid of race challenges and time trials. It was a clever structure that let you choose your path and gradually ramp up difficulty. Customization was minimal in this game. There was no tuning or visual mods, but the sheer number of unlockables gave players a reason to keep grinding. The soundtrack to this game was pure Ridge Racer. High energy techno, trance and electrical beats that matched the game's pace. Tracks looped well and kept the adrenaline pumping. Engine sounds were stylised and not realistic but very, very satisfying. And the announcer returned with his signature shouting encouragement and catchphrases like "keep drifting" and "you're in the zone." It was cheesy but iconic. Ridge Racer 6 received very solid reviews, averaging around 8 out of 10. Critics praised its style, speed and classic gameplay, but noted its lack of innovation and depth compared to other launch titles. For fans of the franchise, it was a return to form. For newcomers, it was fun and an accessible racer that didn't demand perfection, just momentum. It also marked the series' first appearance on an Xbox console, expanding its reach beyond PlayStation loyalties. While later entries would experiment with realism and open world elements, Ridge Racer 6 stayed true to its roots. This game was a turbocharged throwback, fast, flashy and unapologetically arcade. It didn't try to simulate real driving, it wanted you to drift sideways at 180 miles an hour. It wanted you to blast nitrous and feel like a racing god. As a launch title, it delivered pure fun and a reminder that sometimes style beats substance. This is another one of those games that I played for this review, and I couldn't put it down. It just lived inside the 360 console for about a week, and I played it over and over and over again. I think one of the most impressive things about this is there were no drops in frame at all. 60 frames consistently throughout, with some great high definition graphics. Looking back on those launch titles now, this was one of the standout graphical games. It just hit a completely different note that we'd just not seen before during the PS2 and Xbox era. And to think this console came through, 4 years after the original Xbox came out, they really did capture the definition of the next generation with this title. When Quake 4 launched on the 360, it brought ID Software's iconic sci-fi shooter series to the high-definition era with a bang and a lot of gore. Developed by Raven Software using the Doom 3 engine, Quake 4 was a direct sequel to Quake 2, diving deeper into the war against the Strogg and delivering a campaign packed with body horror, heavy firepower, and relentless pacing. Quake 4 picks up right after the events of Quake 2. You play as Matthew Kane, a Marine in the elite Rhino squad, dropped onto the Strogg homeworld to finish off what previous protagonists started. The narrative is darker and more cinematic than previous entries, with cutscenes, squad banter, and scripted sequences that added weight to the mission. Quake 4's combat is fast, brutal, and unapologetically old school. Movement is quick, strafing is essential, and weapons hit hard. You've got classic arsenal, machine gun, shotgun, nail gun, lightning gun, and the iconic railgun. Each weapon feels satisfying and punchy sounds, with distinctive tactical roles. The enemy design is grotesque and aggressive. The Strogg soldiers charge with cybernetic limbs and grotesque implants, while larger enemies like the Macron and the Gladiator require serious firepower. The AI is decent. They'll flank, take cover, swarm in numbers, but it's the intensity of the encounters that keep you on edge. Level design blends tight corridors with open battlefields. You'll fight through factories, labs, alien fortresses, often alongside your squad mates. While they're mostly scripted, their presence stood out as some immersion and helped sell the scale of the war. After Kane's transformation, gameplay subtly shifts. You'll gain access to Strogg tech, enhanced movement, new HUD elements, and improved weapon interfaces. It's not a full RPG system, but it has variety and reinforces the narrative. You're not just a Marine, you're a weapon. Health and armor pickups return, and medics and technicians heal you and repair you between battles. It's a nod to a classic shooter mechanics, but with a squad. Built on the Doom 3 engine, Quake 4 looked sharp on the Xbox 360. Lighting was moody and atmospheric, and textures were detailed. Character models were grotesquely well rendered. The frame rate also held up reasonably well, though. There were occasional dips during heavy firefights. The sound design was top tier. Weapon effects, enemy screams, ambient machinery created a tense, oppressive atmosphere. And the soundtrack mixed industrial tones with orchestral swells matching the game's grim tone. Quake 4 received some solid reviews, averaging around 8 out of 10. Critics praised its campaign, its visuals, and its classic combat, but noted its lack of innovation compared to other shooters. For fans of Quake 2, it was a satisfying continuation. For newcomers, it was a gritty, intense ride that stood out in a launch lineup. But it didn't redefine the genre. It reinforced what Quake made great: speed, brutality, and biomechanical horror. While the series would later fade from the spotlight, Quake 4 remains a cult favourite amongst shooter purists. When Perfect Dark Zero launched on the 360, it carried the weight of legacy. Rare's original Perfect Dark on the Nintendo 64 was a genre-defining shooter, stealthy, stylish, and it had. Zero aimed to reboot the franchise for a new generation, offering a prequel story, co-op gameplay, and a visual showcase for Microsoft's new console. The result? Well, it was a bold, uneven, but fascinating launch title that tried to do it all. Perfect Dark takes place before the events of the original game, following Joanna Dark's rise from bounty hunter to corporate saboteur. The narrative is pulpy, cyberpunk light, with a global conspiracy, shady tech firms, and a cast of eccentric mercenaries. It's told through stylized cutscenes with cel-shaded character art and voiceovers that range from solid to campy. Joanna herself is reimagined, less agenty and more rebellious upstart. Her journey spans exotic locales, Hong Kong rooftops, jungle compounds, and underground labs. The tone swings between gritty and cartoonish, never quite settling, but always trying to push forward. The gameplay is a hybrid of stealth and action. You can duel with weapons, use cover mechanics, deploy gadgets like vision enhancers and data thieves. The arsenal included pistols, shotguns, rifles, and experimental techs like a laptop gun, which was a sentry disguised as a computer. Each weapon has a secondary function, adding some technical depth. Combat is fast but floating. Movement feels loose, and aiming can be imprecise, especially with the default sensitivities. The cover system, a rare for shooters at the time, lets you snap to surfaces and peek out, but it was clunky and inconsistent. AI enemies were aggressive but predictable, often charging head-on or getting stuck in loops. Level design is ambitious but uneven. Some missions offered branching paths, verticality and co-op friendly layouts. Others felt linear and padded, with repetitive objectives and unclear direction. Still, the variety of environments and the mission types kept things interesting. Co-op was a standout feature. You can play the entire campaign with a friend, in split screen or online. The level scales in difficulty and layout encouraging teamwork and strategy. It's one of the few launch titles to offer full co-op integration, and it certainly adds to replay. Perfect Dark was a visual showcase in 2005. Character models were detailed, environments were richly textured, and the lighting effects gave a cinematic glow. The art direction leaned into neo-futurism with holograms and chrome surfaces, stylized architectures. However, the visuals haven't aged too gracefully. Animations are quite stiff, facial expressions are wooden, and some textures look muddy. Still, for its time, it was quite impressive, especially in the large-scale firefights with explosions and particle effects. Perfect Dark Zero received mixed reviews, averaged around 7.5 out of 10. Critics praised the ambition of the co-op features and the multiplayer depth, but they criticised the inconsistent tone, the clunky mechanics, and the lack of polish. For fans of the original, it was a curious prequel, full of ideas, but it lacked the tight execution of its predecessors on the N64. It didn't become the flagship franchise Microsoft had hoped for, but it did carve out a niche. Today it will be remembered as a bold experiment, flawed, but packed with personality and potential. Perfect Dark Zero was a launch title that swung for the fences and didn't hit every mark, but it did dare to be different. If you're willing to overlook the rough edges, there was quite a lot to enjoy, and in a sea of gritty shooters, Joanna Dark's neon-soaked adventure really did stand out. For me, it was one of those games at launch that I tried and didn't really like, and having played it back, I'm still not entirely certain about it. It does offer something interesting and something unique at the time, but I really don't think it stood up particularly well compared to a lot of other shooters on the Xbox 360 over time.
See the blue blocks? They're intrusion countermeasure electronics. Eyes to you and me.
When Peter Jackson's King Kong launched on the 360, it wasn't just a movie tie-in, it was a cinematic experience. It was developed by Ubisoft Montpellier and overseen by Jackson himself. The game aimed to immerse players in the primal terror and awe of Skull Island. With no HUD, dynamic perspective shifts, and a commitment to the atmosphere, King Kong was one of the most daring launch titles on the console. The game very closely followed the plot of the 2005 film. You play as Jack Driscoll, a screenwriter turned survivor, navigating the deadly terrain of Skull Island alongside Ann Darrow, Carl Denham, and a crew of doomed explorers. The narrative unfolds through in-game dialogue and scripted sequences, with voice acting from the film's cast, including Naomi Watts, Adrian Brody, and Jack Black, adding authenticity. But the real twist, you don't just play as Jack, you also become Kong. The game alternates between these tense first-person survival and third-person beast modes, letting you experiment the story from both ends of the food chain. As Jack, the gameplay is immersive and stripped down. There's no HUD, no health bar, ammo count, or objective markers. You rely on the environmental clues and the character dialogue. The weapons are scarce, and primitive spears, bones, fire, and the occasional pistol or shotgun. Combat is desperate and scrappy, with giant insects, raptors, and other horrors constantly threatening your crew. Fire plays a key role. You can ignite spears to burn brush or scare enemies, and torches become lifelines in dark caves. The puzzles were environmental, raising gates, distracting predators, or finding safe paths through deadly terrain. As Kong, the tone shifts. You're powerful, agile, and brutal. Combat is visceral, punching, grabbing, roaring to intimidate foes. You'll battle V-Rexes, scale cliffs, and protect Anne in cinematic set pieces. The controls are looser, but the spectacle is undeniable. Kong's segments feel like playable movie scenes, complete with dramatic camera angles and orchestral swells. King Kong was a visual standout at launch. Skull Island is dense, foggy, and alive with danger. The environments are richly detailed. Twisting vines, crumbling ruins, and towering cliffs create a sense of scale and also claustrophobia. Lighting is moody, with shifts of sunlight piercing the jungle canopies, and fire casts flickering shadows. The lack of HUD enhances immersion. You feel vulnerable, lost, constantly on edge. It's bold design choice that pays off, especially in Jack's segments, where every encounter feels like a survival horror. The audio was a real highlight. The ambient jungle sounds, chirping, rustling, distant roars, created tension. The score, which was adapted from the film, swells in the key moments and fades into eerie silence when danger lurks. The voice acting was strong, with Jack Black's manic energy and Naomi Watts' vulnerability grounding in the experience. Creature sounds were bone-chilling. The V-Rex's roar, Kong's chest pounding, and the screeches of giant bats all contribute to the game's primal tone. Kong received positive reviews, averaging around 8 out of 10. Critics praised its atmosphere, its cinematic presentation, and very bold design choices. The dual perspective gameplay was seen as innovative, and the lack of HUD was lauded for immersion. Some criticised the repetitive combat and linear structure, but overall, it was considered one of the best movie tie-ins ever made. It helped define the Xbox 360's launch window, showing what games could be like. So they could be cinematic, emotional, and artistically ambitious. Ubisoft's collaboration with Peter Jackson set a precedent for director-driven gameplay adaptations. Peter Jackson's King Kong was a beast of a launch title, raw, immersive, and unforgettable. It didn't just adapt a movie, it expanded it, letting players feel the terror of Skull Island and the fury of Kong himself. With its bold, dark design, atmospheric storytelling, and dual gameplay structure, it proved that movie games could be more than cash-ins, they could be brilliant experiences. Having played this on, I can see what the reviewers were saying at the time. It did have a good feel to it. I didn't compare this to the previous generation, but I did read that it was a bit of a step up in terms of the graphical fidelity. And it certainly was fun to play. I found myself playing for a lot longer than I showed in this footage, because I actually really enjoyed playing the game, and I really was interested to see where the story was going to take me. It's one that I'll certainly be going back to in coming weeks.
Great, Jack! Fantastic!
It's serious.
When Dead or Alive 4 launched on the 360, it wasn't just a fighting game. It was a technical showcase. It was developed by Team Ninja and published by Tecmo. Dead or Alive 4 brought blistering speed, cinematic presentation, and online innovation to the console's launch window. It built on the franchise's signature counter-heavy combat while pushing boundaries in visual fidelity and multiplayer design. It redefined the series with fast-paced fluid combat with a focus on timing, spacing, and counters. The triangle system, strikes beat throws, throws beat holds, holds beat strikes, remained intact, but the execution was tighter and more punishing. Counters required precise timing, and advanced players could bait and punish with brutal efficiency. New mechanics added depth. The bounce combo system allowed players to extend juggles after knockdowns, rewarding aggressive play. Ground attacks were expanded, and environmental hazards like electrified walls or collapsing platforms added a strategic layer to positioning. The game ran at a silky 60 frames per second, with responsive controls and crisp hit detection. Matches felt fast, technical, and satisfying, whether you were mashing buttons or mastering frame data. Stages were dynamic, with multi-tiers. You could knock opponents off ledges, through glass or into hazards, triggering transitions and damage bonuses. Locations range from neon cityscapes to ancient temples, each rendered with rich detail and atmospheric lighting. The camera work during fights was dramatic, zooming in on counters, tracking aerial combos, and highlighting environmental destruction. It felt like a martial arts movie in motion. The UI was clean and menus were snappy. Replay mode let you save and review matches, and a training mode offered tools for mastering combos and setups. Dead or Alive 4 was one of the first fighting games to fully embrace Xbox Live. Online lobbies supported voice chat, avatar customization, and room decoration. You could spectate matches, chat with opponents, and earn points to unlock accessories and titles. Matchmaking was smooth, and netcode was solid for this time. Ranked matches tracked stats, while casual lobbies allowed for friendly sparring. The social features were ahead of their time, laying the groundwork for future online fighters. Dead or Alive 4 received very strong reviews, averaging around 8.5 out of 10. Critics praised its visuals, combat depth, and online features, though some noted the story mode shortcomings and the steep learning curve for newcomers. It sold over 1 million copies within its first year and became a staple of the early Xbox 360 multiplayer. For many players, it was their first taste of online fighting, and it left a lasting impression. Dead or Alive 4 also marked a turning point in the franchise, transitioning from niche appeal to mainstream recognition. Its success helped cement Team Ninja's reputation for technical excellence and visual flair. Gun launched on the 360. It brought something rare to the console's early lineup, a Western. Developed by Neversoft and published by Activision, Gun was a bold attempt to blend open-world exploration, cinematic storytelling, and a brutal frontier justice. It wasn't redemption yet, but it laid the groundwork for what Western games would become. You play as Colton White, a hunter turned gunslinger, after a steamboat ambush reveals secrets about his past. The story unfolds across a blood-soaked trail of revenge, corruption, and betrayal, with Colton chasing down outlaws, crooked lawmen, and railroad tycoons. It's violent and surprisingly emotional, and voice acting from Hollywood talent like Thomas Jane, Christopherson, and Ron Perlman. The game world spans frontier towns, mining camps, canyons, and Native American territories. It's not massive, but it's dense with atmosphere. Campfires crackling, vultures circling overhead, and every settlement feels lived in and lawless. Gun's combat was fast, brutal, and satisfying. You had revolvers, rifles, shotguns, bows, and dynamite, each with distinct handling and impact. The quick draw mechanic slowed down time, letting you fan your revolver and chain headshots in cinematic fashion. It's stylish and deadly, especially when ambushed by a gang of bandits. Melee combat was simple but effective. Colton can slash with a knife or swing a tomahawk. Horseback combat was a highlight, mounted shootouts and chase sequences that felt straight out of a Western film. The cover mechanic was minimal, so fights were aggressive and mobile. Enemies flanked, rushed, and used terrain, keeping you on your toes. The game doesn't hold back. Blood sprays, limbs fly, and executions are savage. Gun was a semi-open world, central hub and branching paths. You can take side missions like bounty hunting, cattle herding, poker games, and protecting your wagon caravans. These activities added flavour and helped build Colton's reputation, but they're limited in scope compared to modern open world standards. Hunting played a role too. You can track elk, wolves, and bears, selling pelts for upgrades. It's a nice touch that reinforces the frontier setting. Upgrades included better weapons, increased health, and faster reloads. You earn them through story progression and completing challenges, giving a sense of growth without overwhelming complexity. On the Xbox 360, Gun received a visual boost over its 6th gen versions. Textures were sharper, lighting was more dynamic, and draw distances were improved. The character models still looked a bit stiff, but the environments, dusty plains, burning towns, moonlit forests, were immersive. The soundtrack mixed orchestral with western twang, enhancing the cinematic feel. Gunshots echoed across canyons, horses galloped with weight and ambient sound. Wind, wildlife, distant gunfire built tension. Voice acting was top tier. Thomas Jane gave Colton a quiet intensity, and Ron Perlman's villainous performance added menace. The dialogue was gritty, profane, and fits the tone perfectly. Gun received strong reviews, averaging around 8 out of 10. Critics praised its storytelling, combat and atmosphere, though some noted it was short in length and had a limited open-world scope. It was seen as an experiment, a western that borrowed tropes but embraced them fully. While it didn't spawn sequels, Gun paved the way for future western games. It blended narrative and action, and it influenced titles like Red Dead Redemption. It showed that Neversoft, best known for Tony Hawk, could deliver cinematic action with grit and heart. On playing this game back, I wasn't so sure that I followed with some of the reviews. I found it to be extremely dated compared to modern games, and some of the dialogue was a bit cringy actually compared to how we look at games today. There was a game in here that I think some would enjoy, but for me, during the launch lineup, there was plenty of other things to play, and Gun was not one that I picked up at launch and never actually have played until I played it for this review. Well, I probably won't be going back to it, while I think that it has a place for some people during that launch lineup because they would have picked it up and played it all the way through to completion. I think it was one for those people that really enjoyed the theme and not for everybody. Here we go. Call of Duty 2. It launched on the Xbox 360, and it wasn't just another World War II shooter. It was a cinematic leap forward. Developed by Infinity Ward, the sequel built on the original's foundation, but with sharper visuals, smarter AI, and a campaign that dropped players into the chaos of war like never before. It was gritty, immersive, and a defining moment for the franchise's rise to dominance. Call of Duty 2 campaign spanned over 3 fronts: the Soviet, British, and American perspectives. You start off as Private Kozlov in the frozen ruins of Stalingrad. Then you shift to the deserts of North Africa with the British 7th Armoured Division. And finally, you storm Normandy and beyond as Corporal Bill Taylor of the US Army. Each chapter is broken into bite-sized missions, but the pacing's relentless. There's no downtime, just constant moments of gunfire and shouted orders. The game trades scripted corridors for semi-open battlefields, letting you flank and improvise, and you choose your approach. It's not sandbox, but it feels dynamic. Objectives range from clearing bunkers and defending positions to calling in artillery and storming fortified towns. The variety keeps things fresh, and the transitions between theatres give the campaign a global scope. Combat is intense and grounded. Weapons felt weighty. Bolt-action rifles demanded precision. SMGs sprayed with recoil, and grenades have a satisfying arc and punch. The sound design is thunderous. Bullets whiz past, mortars shake the screen, and squad mates scream over the chaos. The regenerating health system, which was new to the series, replaced medikits, encouraging cover-based tactics and aggressive movement. It was controversial at the time, but it streamlined the experience and became a genre standard. The AI is standout. Enemies flank, suppress, and retreat. Allies shout context-sensitive commands. They lay down covering fire and react to your actions. It's not perfect. Some scripting is obvious, but it creates the illusion of a living battlefield. Smoke grenades played a tactical role, obscuring vision and breaking line of sight. You use them to cross open ground, blind machine gunners, or mask your retreat. Small touches that add depth. On Xbox 360, Call of Duty 2 was a stunner. The environments, snow, sand, mud, rubble, were richly textured and dynamically lit. Particle effects filled the air with dust and debris, and character models were detailed and expressive. The game ran at a very solid frame rate, with smooth animations and cinematic camera work. Explosions lit up the screen, and the draw distances gave battles a sense of scale. Compared to its PC and 6th generation versions, the Xbox 360 edition was clearly next generation. The UI was minimal, keeping focus on the immersion. There were no intrusive markers or clutter, just your weapon, your squad, and what's going on around you. Multiplayer was solid but limited. Xbox Live supported 8 players across classic modes like Team Deathmatch and Headquarters. The maps were tight and tactical, with checkpoints, sniper lanes, and destructible cover. There was no progression system, no perks or unlockables or customization. It was just skill-based combat, reminiscent of PC LAN play. While it lacked in depth of later entries, it laid the groundwork for what Call of Duty multiplayer would become. Call of Duty received critical acclaim, averaging around 9 out of 10. Reviewers praised the cinematic campaign and smart AI and immersive presentation. It sold millions of copies and became a flagship title for Xbox 360, helping define the console's early identity. It also marked a turning point for the franchise, shifting from cult favourite to blockbuster juggernaut. The success of Call of Duty 2 paved way for Modern Warfare and the series' eventual dominance of the first-person genre. This game plays absolutely fantastically today. I played through at least the first 3 missions of each of the campaign segments and enjoyed every single minute of it. It really does hold up very, very well compared to modern shooters. I can see why people liked it at the time. I remember this was the main reason I got my 360. I desperately wanted to play this game, and I was so pleased when I got the opportunity to play it. Revisiting it reminded me of everything that made it exciting in the first place, and everything that it really paved the way to become for first-person shooters. I was very, very lucky to experience this back in the original lineup of the Xbox 360 20 years ago, and playing it again was absolutely wonderful. It just shows how games don't need to be overly complicated, they just need to be really, really good fun. When Kameo Elements of Power launched with the 360, it was Rare's first original IP in years, and a bold attempt to blame Zelda-style adventuring with shape-shifting combat and high fantasy storytelling. Originally developed for the GameCube and then ported to the Xbox, and finally rebuilt for the 360, Kameo arrived with a long development history and high expectations. The result was a visually stunning, mechanically innovative action-adventure that did stand out in the all-launch lineup. You play as Kameo, an elven warrior from the Elemental Kingdom, tasked with rescuing her kidnapped family, stopping the evil Troll King Thorn. The narrative's classic fantasy royal betrayal, ancient powers, and a world on the brink of war. It's told through stylized cutscenes and in-game dialogue, with voice acting that ranges from earnest to campy. The world is lush and varied. Icy mountains, molten caverns, and enchanted forests, all rendered with vibrant colour and dynamic lighting. It's not open world, but each zone feels expansive and layered with secrets tucked behind destructible walls and hidden paths. Kameo's core mechanic is transformation. She can morph into 10 elemental warriors, each with unique abilities, combat styles, and traversal mechanics. You start with a few and unlock more as the story progresses, creating a Metroidvania-style loop of revisiting areas with new powers. Combat's driven with combos and chaotic effect. You might switch from Chiller, an Ice Yeti who hurls spears, to Major Ruin, who's an armadillo who rolls through enemies, to Ash, a fire dragon who launches explosive blasts. The game encouraged constant switching, stringing together attacks, solving puzzles, and exploiting enemy weaknesses. The transformation system is slick. You can map warriors to face buttons and swap mid-combo, creating fluid chains of elemental destruction. It's flashy, satisfying, and unlike anything else in the launch lineup. Boss fights were large scale and cinematic, often requiring clever use of multiple forms. They weren't overly difficult, but they were visually impressive, and the mechanic was varied. Kameo was a visual showpiece for the 360. The environments were richly textured, particle effects filled the screen, and lighting was dynamic and cinematic. The character models were stylized but detailed, and the animation, especially during transformations, was smooth and expressive. The game ran at a solid frame rate, with minimal loading times and quick transitions between forms. The art direction leaned into fantasy whimsy with oversized enemies, glowing runes, and magical flora. It felt like a playable fairy tale. The soundtrack was composed by Steve Burke and was sweeping and emotional, enchanting both quiet exploration and bombastic battles. The sound effects were punchy, and voice work, while uneven, gave the game some personality. Kameo received generally positive reviews, averaging around 7.5 out of 10. Critics praised its visuals, transformation mechanics and creativity, but they did note it was short in length and it had some uneven pacing. Some felt the tone was also inconsistent, oscillating between epic and cartoonish, but most agreed that it was a standout launch title. Unfortunately, it didn't spawn a sequel, and Rare shifted focus to other projects like Viva Pinata and some of their Connect titles. Kameo remains a cult favourite, remembered for ambition, charm and unique gameplay. Playing this one again for the review, it reminded me of how much I enjoyed playing this during the launch window 20 years or so ago. I actually found it to be more fun back then than perhaps it was when I played it back through. I didn't play it all through. I played maybe the first 2 or 3 levels and got a feel for that changing mechanic between the different elements. I think this would be a really good game actually to play with a young child today, because it is really, really good fun, and it's quite an experience with all of the different cartoon graphics that are in there. When Condemned Criminal Oranges launched with the 360, it didn't come with flashy cars or futuristic weapons. It came with a rusty pipe and a flashlight. Developed by Monolith Productions, Condemned with the first-person horror experience that ditched traditional gameplay for raw melee combat, forensic investigation, and psychological tension. It was grim, grounded, and unforgettable. You play as Ethan Thomas, an FBI agent framed for murder and forced to hunt down a serial killer in the decaying underbelly of nameless American City. The narrative unfolds through disturbing crime scenes, cryptic clues, and increasing surreal encounters. It's part detective thriller, part descent into madness. The story is told through in-game dialogue, radio chatter, and unsettling hallucinations as Ethan grips on reality slips. The line between hunter and hunted blurs. It's not just about solving crimes, it's about surviving them. Condemned's combat is visceral and brutal. You rarely find firearms, and when you do, they have very limited ammo and no reloads. Instead, you rely on improvised melee weapons, pipes, crowbars, fire axes, rebar, and even mannequin arms. Each weapon has a different speed and damage and block ratings, forcing you to adapt on the fly. Fights are intimate and terrifying. Enemies lunge from the shadows, scream obscenities, and try and flank you. The AI is unpredictable. They'll feint, retreat, and ambush. Blocking and timing are essential, and every hit feels heavy and consequential. Finishers added cinematic flair. You could slam heads into walls, bash skulls with blunt objects, or deliver bone-crunching kicks. It's not stylized, it's savage. Beyond combat, you use forensic tools to analyze crime scenes. UV lights reveal blood trails, laser scanners detect evidence, and chemical kits identify substances. These segments are scripted but immersive, adding a layer of investigation tension. Condemned thrives on atmosphere. You explore abandoned schools, derelict subway stations, condemned buildings, and pitch-black alleyways. The lighting's dynamic and oppressive, and your flashlight is your lifeline, casting long shadows and revealing horrors just out of reach. Sound design is masterful. Creaking floorboards, distant screams, ambient noise build constant dread. There's no music, just a hum of broken lights and the echo of your own footsteps. Levels are linear, but they're dense, with hidden collectibles and alternative paths. The pacing's tight, quiet exploration, punctuated with sudden violence. You're never safe. The game makes sure you feel it. On the 360, Condemned looked sharp, textures were detailed, character models were expressive, and the lighting effects were cutting edge for the time. The environments were grimy and believable, with decay rendered in lovely detail. The frame rate held steady, and animations, especially in combat, were fluid and impactful. Enemy designs were grotesque but grounded, with twitchy movements and disturbing expressions. Condemned received very strong reviews, averaging around 8.5 out of 10. Critics praised the atmosphere, combat and sound, though some noted it was quite short in length and had limited replayability. It became a cult classic, especially amongst horror fans. It helped define the 360's early identity, showing the console could deliver mature and cinematic experiences beyond shooters and sports games. A sequel, Condemned 2, followed in 2008, but the original remained more focused and haunting experience. Playing this again for the review took me back to those early days of the Xbox 360. This was a game I played from start to finish during that period of time, and it actually was just as haunting to sit and play it 20 years on as a fully grown adult as it was when I was a young adult back in the day. It made my hairs stand up on end when I was playing it and reminded me of those days sat late at night at my parents' house playing this game when it first came out. It still delivers that spine-chilling horror that is masterful of movies around that time, and I was really, really pleased to pick this back up and play it again. It's one of those games that I had completely and utterly forgotten about, and I was so pleased to be reminded of it. When Tony Hawk's American Wasteland dropped on the 360, it brought the franchise's signature style to the next generation, with bold promise, one massive world, and no loading screens. Developed by Neversoft and published by Activision, this entry fused classic arcade skating with open-world ambition, punk aesthetics, and BMX chaos. It wasn't a revolution, but it was a gritty, stylish evolution. You play as a nameless skater who arrives in Los Angeles with dreams of making it big. After getting mugged and rescued by a punk named Mindy, you're introduced to the concept of the American Wasteland, a skate utopia built by misfits, artists and rebels. Your mission? Help build it by collecting pieces from across LA's skate scene. The story is told through comic book style cutscenes voiced by a cast of punk archetypes. It's cheesy, self-aware and full of attitude. You meet BMX riders, graffiti artists and skate legends like Tony Hawk himself, all wrapped up in a rebellious tone that channels early 2000s counterculture. American Wasteland sticks to the franchise core, fast, fluid, trick chaining with focus on combos, manuals and reverts. The controls were tight, trick systems deep as ever, letting you link grinds, flips, grabs and specials into absurd point chains. New additions include BMX riding, which lets you hop on a bike and perform tricks with a separate control scheme. It's not as refined as the skating, but it adds variety and opens up new challenges. The open world structure connected areas like Hollywood, Beverly Hills and Santa Monica via tunnels and alleyways. While there were no loading screens, it's technically true. Transitions were masked by narrow corridors and brief pauses. Still, step forward in immersion. On the 360, American Wasteland received a visual upgrade over the 6th gen counterparts. Textures were slightly sharper, lighting was more dynamic, and character models had more detail. The environments popped with colour and personality, graffiti-covered walls, neon-lit storefronts, and sun-drenched skate parks. Animations were smooth, and the frame rate held steady, even though it wasn't a graphical powerhouse, but it captured the punk skate aesthetic with flair. The soundtrack was punk and alt-rock, featuring tracks from Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, Rise Against and more. It was loud, fast, perfectly matched the game's rebellious tone. Voice acting was over the top but fun, with exaggerated personalities and plenty of snark. The ambient sounds, board wheels on pavement, crowd reactions and city noises added texture to the world. American Wasteland received mixed to positive reviews, around 7.5 out of 10. Critics praised the gameplay and the soundtrack and its ambition, but they noted the open world felt stitched together and the BMX mechanics were undercooked. Still, it was a solid entry that kept the momentum of this franchise going. It didn't redefine the genre, but it captured the spirit of the skate park culture and gave fans a new playground to shed. I was a massive fan of Tony Hawk's back in the day, and I've got to be honest, I felt that this was a massive step backwards in terms of gameplay. I didn't enjoy the open world. I found it to be pretty shallow compared to future entries. But I suppose for the time this would have felt very, very fresh. from the linear skate parks that would have been in place during the earliest Tony Hawk entries. I found the acting to be a little bit wooden, and also I think the game felt dark to me. Now maybe it was just the opening level, but it certainly didn't seem sun-drenched in the way that it was described in the reviews that I read. Still, a good entry, but not one perhaps that I'd have been looking to pick up again.
You go up a quarter pipe, and on the way down, do this. Watch. Now you give it a try.
So, I finish where we started. The Xbox 360, 20 years old, and what an interesting launch lineup. There was pretty much something for everybody during that launch window. There were sports games, racing games, platform games, fighting games, first-person shooters, third-person action adventures. It had everything. Looking back on those games now, it's easy to see the ones that stood out in the crowd. Project Gotham Racing 3 was absolutely phenomenal. Ridge Racer 6 surprised me and stands out as being a technical masterpiece at 60 frames a second. Call of Duty 2 just defined first-person shooters to me back in the day, and it looks good even today playing it, and one that I absolutely cannot put down playing even now. Dead or Alive 4 was absolutely glorious and set the bar very, very high for future beat-em-ups on the platform. And there were a whole host of other games in there that, playing them even now, after all these years, still look and play reasonably well. I think the letdown for me were the sports games from EA. I remember being disappointed by all of them actually during the launch window. I didn't play the 2K sports games during the launch lineup, but actually the hockey game, NHL 2K6, was pretty slick actually. I quite liked playing that. But the other sports games, those ones from EA, were just so half-baked. There were so many functions missing. And I think people, I certainly for one, felt very let down by them at the time. Didn't stop me playing them because they looked great with the high-definition graphics, especially if you had a flat-panel TV at the time. But they were a little bit short-sighted and narrow in depth. Need for Speed Most Wanted was pretty cool. Enjoyed that. Sorry, Need for Speed Underground was really good. And I was really impressed, I already said it, by Ridge Racer 6. Really, really cool. I'd forgotten what a good game Condemned was. It was really, really neat to play that. I remember playing that through from start to finish back in the day, and I was really impressed by it, playing it back again recently, about just the feeling and the atmosphere that game gave you. For me, if I could pick two games though that I would go back to time and time again, Project Gotham Racing 3, because it just looks and sounds absolutely incredible. And Call of Duty 2, I could play all day, every day. Such an incredible game. So pleased to have started to revisit this console, and I really hope you can subscribe to the channel and enjoy me as I explore many of those other launch games as we move forward over the next couple of years. I intend to put those videos out in real time. I'm not going to rush ahead, so each year I will pick up the titles that came out during that year and try and get the videos out to you during those months that that game launched. That way we're always seeing it 20 years on. We're always reliving that story in the same time frame, looking back with the same lens. So I move on from 2025 and I move on to 2026. 20 years on, what games came out in 2006 that you're looking forward to me reviewing for you guys on the channel? Thanks for joining me. I'm Craig. I'll see you all soon. Take care.
A future where those games connect me to the people and experiences I care about most. That future starts right here, right now. This is my Xbox 360. It's here and it's on.